Welcome to the Women Living Well After 50 podcast. I'm Sulon Carrick and I'm passionate about inspiring, motivating, supporting and informing women over 50 to embrace this exciting time of life. Health and wellness in mind, body and spirit are the foundations for living well, but there is so much more to a life well lived. Each week, through conversations with my guests, I'll be presenting topics that will help us all to live well and enjoy life. So join me as we discover new ways to become women living well after 50. Are you ready to start living? What are you waiting for? Let's get started. Welcome to the Women Living Well After 50 podcast. I'm Sulon Carrick and it's lovely to have you join me. Finding courage to change and follow your passion. That's the topic we're going to be discussing today. And my guest today is Joanne Tracey, an Australian author of contemporary women's fiction and cosy culinary mysteries, inspired by her travels, a love of baking, and her devotion to British cosy crime TV shows. Based on the Sunshine Coast in southeast Queensland, Jo is an unapologetic daydreamer, eternal optimist, and confirmed morning person. When she isn't writing, Jo loves baking, reading, long walks along the beach, posting her way too many photos of sunrises on Instagram, and dreaming of the next destination and the next story. Jo's life goals, apart from being a world-famous author, are to be an extra on Midsummer Murders and to cook her way through Nigella's books. Today, I'm going to be talking to Jo about finding the courage to change. Jo has recently made some changes in her life to follow her passion, and it takes courage to make changes, as we all know. So let's go and join the conversation and hear Jo's story. Welcome, Joanne Tracey, to the Women Living Well After 50 podcast. It's lovely to have you join me.
Thank you very much for asking me. It's a pleasure to be here, Sue.
It is, and we are friends, which is great. So we're going to have a lovely conversation today, as well as hopefully giving out some messages to other women about finding courage to change and to follow our passion, because it's not an easy thing to do. There's lots of things involved, and especially up here in our head, you know, the little voice that's saying, oh, I don't think you can do this, or should I do this, or whatever. So you've recently gone through some changes and you are following your passion full time now. So I'm excited to talk to you about that and, you know, how you felt and what you are doing. So I want to start off first by asking you, as an author, we're going back before your changes here. As an author, how tough was it to have a full-time job and still follow your passion for writing? Because that really is what you wanted to do.
It's actually an interesting question, that one, because on the surface it sounds really tough. And I think looking back, it should have been really tough, and it was really tough. But the point was I wanted to do it. So there was no perfect time to do it. So if that meant that I was writing when Sarah was still at school, I remember writing beside the pool while she was doing squat swimming before or after work. I remember writing at lunch hours when I was in the office. I remember writing in the school staff room when she was having maths tuition after school. I remember doing all of that, writing in airports, anywhere that I possibly could, just because it was what I wanted to do. It was not I need to take some time out to do this. It was just, I want to do it. So that's really what I did. I know some people would say to me, oh, you know, you get through so much and you're so busy and all the rest of it, but that didn't really matter so much, as in I knew there were things I had to do with a day job. I had to do them or I wouldn't get paid. But once I got them done, the things I didn't want to do, I could then do the things that I wanted to do. And that was more important to me. So it was worth being busy to do that in. So, yeah, looking back, I guess it was tough, but at the same time, it gave me deadlines that pushed me to get things done that I may not have otherwise done if I'd had a day to sit and do it in.
Mm, mm. And while you were, with your answer there, a couple of points came to my mind. Firstly, that saying of if you want something done, give it to a busy person, because, we always admired you, Jo, in our little circle of friendship, in the fact that you could do your day job and yet be writing these fabulous books, which we will get to a little bit later. But, trying to do all that. So obviously you did sort of structure things a little bit there and take opportunities. And the other point that you sort of came to me when you were talking then was that you actually made the decision to put yourself and your passion first. Using it in, like, now Sarah's at swimming and I'm sitting here. Now I could just be sitting here watching her, or I could actually utilize that time for me and do something that I wanted to do. And I don't think that people think about time that way. They probably think, oh, okay, I've got to take my child or my grandchild to there, and then I've got to be present looking at them all the time. Whereas you looked for opportunities to bring your passion in and to do that even though you couldn't do it full time.
Yeah. And I think that was probably the key to it, because at the same time, I was doing what I needed to do for Sarah. I was doing what I needed to do for Grant. So all of that was still being taken care of. There was no problem with that being taken care of. It's just that I was choosing to use that time in other ways for me. And if it meant that a house needed a vacuum or whatever, well, who cares?
That's right. Yeah.
So, life's too short to, and I guess that's probably what my whole thing was. I was so frightened of missing out and not doing what I really wanted to do that I had to push myself. So, at the end of the day, I didn't want to, if the worst happened, I didn't want to sit there and say, well, at least the floor was clean. But
well, that's right. We want that on our tombstone, don't we?
At least the floor was clean.
I didn't get to do anything else with my life or really do what I wanted to do, but at least the floor was clean. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. So, but yeah, I just admire that you had that attitude, because a lot of us would go, oh, well, I really want to do it, but I can't fit it in, or it's going to take me away from my family, or things like that. I can't put myself first. So I think you found a happy medium there that you were able to.
There was a happy medium, and there were times where I was stupidly busy, and I get that. Like, I remember finishing off a book, sitting at the airport waiting to go to Hong Kong to do a office relocation. And I remember even last year, before I finished work, I was doing an office relocation down in Brisbane. And so I'd lug around 2 computers the whole time, so that when I was on the train heading down to Brisbane, that's 2 hours free writing time. So I can either sit on the train and look out at not very much, or I can sit on the train and back out a story, or any words were good words. And that's the whole point when you've got a passion about something, whether it's writing, whether it's art, whether it's anything, really, there's no perfect time to do it. And if you wait for the muse to hit, and a lot of people will say things like that, oh, what about if the muse doesn't come? Well, the muse has got no choice but to turn up, really, because this is the time that I've got available. So I'm using this time, whether or not that muse turns up or not. And sometimes she does, and sometimes she doesn't.
Yeah, no, that's the way to do it. It's just that I think some people just don't. But also, I would think sometimes it's hard to turn on that creativity. But I suppose once you get into a book, it's easier to, start saying, oh, okay, I know where I'm up to or where I'm going with this. I'll quickly get this done on the train or wherever. Yeah. So we talked about your day job, and now recently you've made some changes and you're now actually writing full time, which is, congratulations to you for taking that step. So how did that feel? Because I think again, you're going from a full-time job with the security of finances, uh, your mental well-being security. You don't have to worry about, what you're doing. You don't have to worry about anything. Someone's paying you to do your job. How did you feel once you had made that decision and you've gone down a new path?
First word was scared. So I've been working forever, and I've had a stressful job forever. So yeah, the first word was scared. So, and I think from as long as I've been writing, I've been dreaming about being able to do it full time, but I've also been dreaming of financial independence. And I'm
Mm,
certainly not there yet in terms of writing. I'm a long way from that. So I think it's probably been fortunate that I have worked as long and as hard, and we have done what we've needed to do as terms of money management to enable me to still do what I want to be doing now. But to walk away from something that was secure, that I knew, as you say, I knew what I was doing. I had a structure. I knew that every day by X time I would be logging on, I would be logging off at a certain time, I would be doing who knows what in the middle of all of that. But I knew that it was happening, and that every fortnight there'd be a certain amount of money turn up into my account. So to walk away from that was scary, but at the same time, really, really freeing. In fact, I was talking to an ex-colleague only yesterday who was finishing up in the job yesterday, in his job. And he said to me, how did you feel when you walked away? Like, was it surreal? And I said, yeah, it was completely surreal, because my job was in Sydney. I live on the Sunshine Coast. I'd gone back to Sydney to hand my computer back and to hand my job over. And I'd booked a night in a motel or in a hotel that particular night before I flew back home again, only because I really didn't fancy getting straight on a plane and all the rest of it that went with it. And it was so good that I did do that, because I went back to that hotel, and even though there was nobody there I could push off against or any of the rest of it, bought myself a glass of champagne, and I sat down and I said, okay, that's it. It's done. It's over. It's the right time. No grieving, no bitterness, no anything. Right time. Let's see what's next.
mm, mm.
So it was a really good full stop. It was the right time to be doing it in. It just, and again, there's no right time.
No,
So
no.
uh,
Sometimes you've got to take that leap of faith and
you
just,
do. Yeah.
yeah, and not without planning, I suppose, but obviously
Yeah.
things are going to work out a little bit better if you've
Oh,
got a plan, which is not unlike when you retire. Like someone like myself that was in a career for so many years, and I retired at 57. And, within six, and I thought, oh, this is going to be great, going to have lots to do. And I didn't really have a passion I was going to follow. It was just circumstances came and I retired. And within 6 months, I was thinking, oh, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? So that's, when I started to think about it. But I think having that plan in place before, or an idea of what you want to do, makes it that little bit easier. Because I did want to ask you, you were talking about how your days were structured. And we get up, we go to work, or we go online. We have that structure when we're in a working environment, or even at home. If you're looking after family or whatever, you've got a structure in place. When you finished your job, you had all this time. How did that affect you, and how did you get into some sort of a routine to structure this new life that you have?
that is a good question. I'm not a structured person by nature. So it's definitely a learned behavior for me.
And yet you were a wonderful project manager, which
And
needs
that's
to be organized and structured.
it's absolutely learned behavior. It really does show that, yeah, it is totally learned behavior, because when I write, I'm a pantser. I fly by the seat of my pants. But I can't live life like that. We
No.
need boundaries and we need some structures. So we thankfully I'd booked a holiday for as soon as I finished work. So we went to Vietnam for a couple of weeks, and that allowed me to decompress. And then I gave myself up until Christmas. So I think it was a period of about 6 weeks we had a lot of visitors in and out. And I thought, no, for 6 weeks, I'm actually going to just let myself lean into whatever it is that needs to be done. Last year was a very, very stressful year. Well, you lived through most of it with me while I was doing a couple of jobs at the same time, as well as trying to write. And I needed, I think, that decompression to wake in the morning and know that when I turned the emails on, I wasn't going to get that drop in the pit of the stomach as to what's happened overnight, or all of those awful tummy rolling, stressy things that go along with that sort of job. But what I've done since is I've actually started working my author day job as a day job. So I'm logging on I'm keeping to exactly the same routine that I had when I was at work. So get up at 4:30, we go for a walk at 5 o'clock, back by 6:30, at my desk by 8, work through to 12, and have a break for lunch, and then continue for another few hours in the afternoon. So I'm structuring my day in almost exactly the same way that I did when I was in the day job. The only difference is now I'm writing and I'm doing some other bits and pieces. So what I'm doing, I'm literally doing the to-do list the same as I did every single morning. So what am I doing today? So this morning I've got this time booked in with you. After that, I'll be sitting down and I'll write for 3 hours. Then I know this afternoon I've got scheduled in, there's a little online tutorial that I found about digital art for marketing purposes. So I'll sit down and I'll do that for an hour. So I'm trying to spend my afternoons doing some of those educational type of things, because I'm really bad at marketing and I need to learn how to be better at it. So that's the way that I'm structuring my day. Work for a certain amount of time, and as I get closer to deadlines, sometimes that's a bit longer. Sometimes I might need to write for 5 hours to get those words out for the day. But that's how I'm structuring it, exactly the same as I did in a day job. So, and that's the biggest challenge I found, people's attitude to this new, I'm calling it a new job, to my new role, as opposed to, how's retirement going, Joe? Well, actually, I'm not retired. Or, hey, I thought we might go have lunch on Tuesday. Are you free for lunch on Tuesday? Well, actually, no, I'm not. I'm working. Yeah, but you're not really working, are you? Well, I thought I am, and that's something that I have to learn not to apologize for. And that's something that I have to learn to put my foot down and be a little firmer about, just in terms of, this is my job now. This is the way I structure my day now. And I have to have it structured, or I will do nothing, because I know exactly what I am like.
And that was something I was going to ask you about, how you sort of react to those, I call them naysayers, but people who just think you're writing, oh, how's your hobby going, when it's actually your career. And I think the fact that, I think first and foremost, you have to take yourself seriously. You have to say, I am serious about what I'm doing here. This isn't just a little hobby that I'm doing. This is a passion and I'm serious about it. And I think that once you sort of can broadcast that fact to people, they get it in their mind and they go, oh, okay. Yeah, well, we better check when Joe's free because she's working, rather than, oh, yeah, Joe, how about we go for morning tea, or let's grab a coffee, or let's do this and that, or you don't have to worry about that today. You can take the day off. So I think you would have to have courage in the strength to say to people, hey, I'm serious about this. This is important to me and this is what I'm doing. And it's not just a little side thing. It's my job.
And it actually is hard work, believe it or not, wrangling words. So you sort of think it should be easy, and it should be easy, but it's not. Like,
I don't think it's
some days
easy.
I finish the day where my brain, I think because when I'm writing a book, and I mentioned before I am a pantser, and we can talk about that a little bit later, but when I'm writing a book, I'm living in my head, I'm living through that character, whatever it is that those characters are doing, whatever struggles they've got. Sometimes they're hard to get to know, and I've got to get to know them. So you're living all of that in your head. And at the end of the day, there are times where I want to sit and do nothing, the same as what I did after a mental day in the day job. I'm using my brain still. I'm just using it in a completely different way. I'm using a different side of it. So it's one of those things. But I was chatting to, I do a thing called Writing Fridays every first and third Friday of each month, where I volunteer for Queensland Writer Centre, and we do a writing group over at Maroochydore Library. Works really well for me because I get to bake. Hello, I love baking. And the second part is I get to write. So all I have to do is run what we call a Pomodoro timer. So we write for 25 minutes, break for 5, write for another 25, and repeat that process. And I've just got to be a little bit tough and quack the whip occasionally if people talk too much in the breaks. But I was chatting to another participant there, and he is, I would say, a real author, but then I'm a real author now. Hello, I've got 12 books out there, so I'm a real author as well. But he's sold hundreds of thousands of copies of books. He writes different worlds, and he is financially independent from his books. He's very, very successful. But I said to him, do you still get that? Do you still get that whole, but this isn't really your job? You know, you're at home. Why aren't you looking after the kids for your wife? And he said, I still get it to this day. He said, so what I've had to do is he goes and works at one of those co-working places. And he's got a spot at one of those. And he said, 3 mornings a week, I'll go and do that just so that I'm out of the house. I'm getting dressed. I'm packing a lunch. I'm going out of the house, and I'm doing it as if I was going to a job, because I would get exactly the same. Oh, you can come and help out at school because you don't have a job. Well, I do have a job. And if I don't do this, I'm not going to get the mortgage paid. So it's not just resigned to somebody my age who is at retirement or almost at retirement age, retiring from the corporate role. It is writers full stop. And I think any artistic type of endeavor.
Yes, I think that people, well, perhaps it's changing, attitudes are changing a little bit, but it is still that, as you said, any creative field is usually just viewed as a hobby rather than, unless, of course, you get to the heights of, you know, the different areas, you know, like an artist or, you know, a performer or something, and you really reach those next heights. Maybe even then, you know, people might start taking you seriously, but it is that feeling, and also that could probably play with your feeling of self-worth and, you know, validation, because people are questioning or not putting the same respect, for want of a better word, on what you're doing. It could, if they're constantly, you know, saying, oh, you know, come and do this, or you don't have to do that, or not taking you seriously, that can play with your mental health as well, can't it? And you start second guessing yourself and doubting yourself, I would think.
You certainly do. And I think that's a big adjustment too from the corporate environment. So in the corporate environment, you have a title, somebody pays you every 2 weeks, you have immediate feedback. So, and it's immediate external feedback. Well, generally speaking, it's if you haven't done it right, you'll certainly get immediate external feedback. But it's that feedback is there, and that external validation that what you're doing means something or should mean something to that particular company or to somebody else. But when you're doing something like this, the validation that you get has to come from within. You can't expect anybody else to give it to you. And what we're doing, and especially when you're writing a novel, so it can take, like, for example, the book I'm putting out in April. Now, I wrote that ridiculously quickly, stupidly quickly. I think I wrote the first draft in about 6 weeks. But
Can
even
I
so,
get you to hold that thought for a
yeah.
moment? Because I've been one of the fortunate few to read that book as an advanced copy. You should be writing it everything in 6 weeks because it was fabulous. And people are in, I tell you, listeners, you are in for a treat when the book comes out because when you told me that, I thought, no way. And then I thought, well, there's your answer, Joe. Write every book in 6 weeks.
Well, thank you very much. And you've just given me some validation as well, which otherwise I would have to wait until it gets published for that. And that's probably the point. You're writing in isolation and you're working in isolation with no validation from anybody else until that book comes out or until it goes through the editing process at the earliest. So you have to rely on your own. If you waited for somebody to say and pat you on the head and say, oh, that's great, you're doing wonderfully well, you'd be waiting a long time. So you have to rely on your own, I guess, resilience to a degree. And the validation you're getting is from your own work. And you have to do that or find other ways to get an immediate feedback. So, and that's one of the reasons that I do bake as well. It's one of the reasons I've always done that, aside from the fact that it relaxes me, the whole measuring and weighing and planning and methodical work relaxes me and quietens my brain. You're getting an immediate result, which is something that I don't normally get
Getting your work.
in
Yeah.
my work.
Yeah.
But that's what I've sort of found. You can't rely on other people to do that for you. You've got to find something within yourself or a hobby, I call it another hobby, or an interest or something from within yourself, whether it's going for a run, going for a walk, having a swim, baking something, doing something that gives you that feeling of validation that you're not getting from being in a role with somebody else giving it to you. Which probably makes no sense at all, but that's the way.
No, it does. It does. And that's what coming back, I'm just thinking all the time, we're talking about you being an author and some people might go, well, I'm not an author and I'm not going to be. But everything we're talking about comes back to anything that we do in life. It's having the courage to do things, having the self-belief, finding that validation, finding the resilience to go against people who, of trying to pull you down. So what we're talking about today really translates to any part of life, doesn't it?
It does, yeah, certainly does. There's somebody I follow on Instagram, and I can't think of the name of them now, but she decided she wanted to run and she'd never run before, and she decided she wanted to run, and it's been a struggle, like watching her go through it. And it applies to even something like that. So it applies to every sort of way of life. You can't wait for people to tap you on the head and say, oh, you're doing so well. You've got to know it yourself.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you've got to have that self-belief and also acknowledge your wins as you go along. Like for you, it might be, the number of words you did, or you finished a chapter or something like that, because all these small steps that we're taking lead up to the big result. And a lot of people just keep their eye looking forward on the end instead of appreciating everything along the way. And you'd probably have some learnings from these little wins and the times that things don't probably go the way you want them to.
Absolutely. There's a lot of times things don't go the way they want them to. Characters don't behave the way that you want them to. And I've learned over the last, especially the last few years, that if I'm stuck in a book, it's because I want it to go in one way and the characters don't want it to go in another. So I'm learning these days just to go with that particular flow and see where it leads me. So,
and I would think that getting back to your the writers group makes me think about how I always say we should surround yourself with cheerleaders or like-minded people because they get it. They get you. Now, our little group, our friendship group, we're your cheerleaders, we're each other's cheerleaders, and that just means the world to us all, I know. But also doing it things and spending time with people who are doing the same sort of thing as you, I think is important, because you don't feel quite so alone, and they're going through the same sort of situation, so you can support each other.
It's absolutely essential, because they are the only people who understand. It's the same as people who've been on reality TV shows together. So the only people who can understand it are the people who have done it at the same time. So whatever the endeavor is, if you can find, and I hate the word tribe, but essentially that's what it is. If you can find your group of people who are doing the same thing, it makes you feel so much less alone. And I know, looking at our group, so I write cozy crime with a little bit of romance sometimes more romance than other times, depends on how I'm feeling. But in our group, we have a sci-fi writer, we have a children's book writer, we have a business writer, we have somebody writing a book about perimenopause, we have a world builder, we have a romance writer, we have someone who writes fantasy romance, like with I think it's werewolves or something in it. So we've got, and there's another person in there that's doing what they call fanfic or fan fiction, where they're inventing other Harry Potter worlds. So everybody's writing something completely different. Everybody is writing something completely different. And the beauty of it is nobody judges what anybody else is doing. Nobody judges how anybody else works. Some people write the way that I do, completely without a plan, without an outline. Other people will have a plot and an outline. They know exactly what they're going to be writing that day. There's a couple of people that handwrite before they write. So everybody writes differently. Everybody writes different work, yet nobody judges anybody else for what it is that we're doing. And we all get the same issues with each other. So it's yeah, give it, like it, as I said, I volunteer to do it, but it's one of the best things I've done.
Yeah. And I think that judgment just comes from ignorance, doesn't it? I mean, people that are going to be judging either aren't capable of doing. I know myself, I don't think I could write a book. I think I admire people who can, even, books that I read sometimes, and I think, you know what, that I didn't enjoy that, or it wasn't a great writing. And then I sit back and I go, well, they've written it. They've put the time in, they've actually produced something, and I don't think I could do that. So it's all right to be an armchair critic or a judger on the side, but that's only because we don't really understand what it takes to get that book, in this case, a book out. As you've said, there's not just the writing of it and the character development and the ideas, and it's the marketing, it's all these other things that you have to be. So really it is a business. You've still got your marketing to do, you've got your advertising, you've got your, the work of producing the book. And so I think people lose sight of that sometimes, and they're quick to judge if a book's not good or not, rather than actually admiring the person for doing that. And I do think that judgment comes a lot of the time from ignorance, or people who wouldn't try to do it themselves are very good at judging other people and what they do.
Fabulous at it, absolutely fabulous at it. And and the whole point is every book has its own, will find its own audience as well.
Yes.
We all like different things in life, and thankfully we all like different things in life. But yes, no, people who have never done it before are certainly very, very good at telling you what you should be doing and telling you what you shouldn't be doing. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's where your self-belief, part of life.
Yeah.
And it's and again, anything we do, like someone said to me, why do you want to do the podcast? Well, I don't know, I just decided I'd like to do one, and I'd never done it before, and it was a challenge I wanted to do, and I pressed the button and thought, oh God, what have I done? But I had the courage to do that, and I thought, wow, I've done it. And it's with anything. anything people want to do, you try. As long as you try and don't let other people hold you back and say you shouldn't be doing it. And also yourself, because yourself can say, oh, I'm trying to think of that term. But anyway, where you sort of say to yourself, well, who do you think you are, trying to do this? I can't think of the terminology for it, but it's quite good. But
I think
anyway,
all
let's.
those naysayers, it comes from a place of fear in a lot of case.
Oh yeah,
And especially the people who do want to pass judgment, or the naysayers, or the ones that want to bring you down, or the ones like I call them, they're almost like, the Dementors in the Harry Potter series, where
yes,
people who can just suck the joy out of anything.
yeah,
And there's people in life who will do that, and they will suck the joy out of it if you let them suck the joy out of it. But it's their problem. And
yes.
half the time it's coming from their fear or their inability to take a leap or to have a go or whatever. And that's their problem. It's not mine. It's
Mm,
theirs.
mm, mm.
So, and that's sometimes the hardest thing to remember, that what you're getting is being projected onto you from somebody else's place of fear rather than your own place of fear.
Mm, mm, mm. And that's also perhaps, like even with friends and that, when you do make changes in your life, whatever it is, it's they fear that you're going to change and the relationship with you is going to change, or they fear that they're going to feel inferior because they don't have the courage to step out of that comfort zone and do something that they want to do. So you're
Yeah.
right, it comes from fear. But look, we're having a lovely conversation here, and I do want to talk about your books before we sort of start wrapping up. Got a little
Yep.
bit of time, but so you talk about writing about cozy crime and romance, and how many books did you say you've written?
There's 12 out there.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes, I'm currently working on number 13. Oh no, number 13 is about to go out. So I'm
yeah,
working on number 14. Oh wow, that
yeah, yeah.
banked up quickly. Yes.
Yeah. So, firstly, congratulations for writing that many books. Some people might get a book out, others might not, like me, might not write one. So, tell us a little bit about. Well, I suppose what's been your favourite book?
Oh,
That's like asking a mother to choose a favourite child, isn't it?
it is. It is. Well, I started writing romantic comedy, I guess, which is contemporary romance. That series was all based in and around Melbourne. Um, and I've got my favorite hero from those. So my favorite hero was definitely a toss up between Brad in Big Girls Don't Cry and Richie in Wish You Were Here. They're my favorites. I could easily fall in love with them. But when it comes to my favorite book, I think it's probably my favorite. I'm going to defer that for a second. My favorite female heroine is Philly. I adore Philly Barker.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely love Philly Barker. I reckon I'd be quite happy writing Philly stories until the day I drop dead. I adore Philly. And for anybody who doesn't know, Philly is a middle-aged antique dealer in Yorkshire. So she's an Aussie, but living in Yorkshire. And Philly's just, I don't know, Philly's got a bit of gumption, and she's possibly, yeah, I don't know, but I love Philly. Anyways, my favorite book, Escape to Curlew Cottage, I
Oh,
think.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm writing the sequel for that one at the moment and struggling with the plot just a little, but Escape to Curlew Cottage, yeah, I think that one pushed me away from some of the contemporary romance, which I wasn't enjoying writing quite as much. And it was born actually on a holiday we had in the Cotswolds, and we're in the cottage that I did base Curlew
Mm,
Cottage.
mm.
I remember saying to my daughter, you know what, I could live here and I could have like a little little garden out the back, and I could sort of live off the grid a bit. And Carly, our Cocker Spaniel, could be like a proper cocker and go bounding across the fields and getting wet underneath. And Sarah said to me, Mum, that's going to last for about as long as it takes for the path to get muddy and you not being able to get out and get some more wine. So she sort of put a little bit of a dampener on it. But when I was writing Curlew Cottage, it incorporated so much of that life that I'd imagined in my head, but also a lot of the baking types of things that I like to do, and the best of things like Bake Off and some of those TV shows like Location, like all those things that I love, Curlew in all of that together.
Yes, yeah,
So
I
I
enjoyed
loved
that
writing
one.
it. Yeah, I loved writing it. I'm enjoying writing the sequel. As I said, I'm struggling, but I did enjoy it. But that's my
Well,
favorite.
I have to say that I really love Philly as well. And what you didn't mention is that to me, it's what did I say? It's a cross between Midsummer Murders and Antique Roadshow, if
Yeah.
you watch those. And, you know, Philly is one of these wonderful women and full of life, and does happen to get involved in little crimes along the way and solving them. And, you know, it's, I fell in love with her as well, and I really do love her as a character. And I always look, I think you've written two now, so I'm sort of thinking, come on, where's the next one? And also, I think, okay, and also, I might be a bit biased here, but any TV producers out there, it would make a fabulous TV series, let me tell you. Anyway, enough plugs there. But so, you know, you get a lot of we're sort of coming to the end, but you get a lot of your inspiration from your baking, your travel, your things like that, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the one and that's important. I think probably a lot of writers get it from personal experience.
I also it's funny actually, because they say write what you know, but I sort of more think write what you want to know about. So that's really like my voice comes through in my books. It has to. I'm writing it. And I remember writing the early days when I was writing some of those, when I was writing my first early contemporary romances, I was so worried that people were going to think, because I write in the first person as well, that they were going to think it was about me, or that it was people I knew, or all the rest of it. And it's not, it's just that it's my voice coming through, and I give my characters careers or jobs that I might be interested in looking or thinking about. In some of them, I've invented little businesses along the way, and there'd be businesses that I'd never be game enough to have a go at or get off the road, but it's fun to give somebody else a go at doing it. And that's sort of where it all comes from. It's not so much something will click and that will be the inspiration behind it. But after that, it's what do I want to learn about? What do I want to know about? And I follow my curiosity with my characters to see where they're going to go to.
Well, that's like in Philly. Obviously, you've done a lot of work on the antique side of things in investigations, because I love the way that it's, you know, not just a cozy crime, but we're learning about, you know, you'll talk about it, an antique piece and describe it and that sort of thing. So that's bringing in that extra knowledge that you've learnt just by your background investigations, I suppose.
Yeah, Philly. I always wanted to write Philly because I've been my mother loves antiques. Mum always had some antique furniture and bits and bobs, and we're always going into antique shops. And Mum used to watch all the shows and read all the magazines and had all that knowledge. And I think I picked a lot up over the years from Mum. So that's why I dedicated the first Philly Barker to Mum, because it was, you know, it really, that interest originally came from there. But you pick things up like Whale Bay, which is the next book that's coming out in April, is called One for Sorrow. And it's a new cozy crime series, or the start of a new cozy crime series set in Southeast Queensland. So it's a completely different set of characters, because they're very Australian characters. And she's Clementine Carter, or Clem, is a jaded lawyer. a jaded Melbourne lawyer. She's come to this place, Whale Bay, to claim an inheritance from her aunt, who just quietly is one of my favourite characters, even though you never really see her. And it's different again because it's got a town of very, very Australian characters in it, and it's got a very Australian mystery. But that one was inspired purely because my daughter moved to the Fraser Coast 3 years ago, and I visited Hervey Bay a lot. And this place, Whale Bay, is a combo of Hervey Bay and where I live here on the Sunshine Coast. So the inspiration comes from different places, and I think I'm going to enjoy writing Clem going forward as well.
Yes, yes, definitely.
They're two very different characters, two very different sets of mysteries, and when I'm writing them, I'm in completely different worlds.
Different places, yeah. Well, look, it's been lovely chatting to you today, and I could keep chatting with you for another hour, or longer. But I just want to ask you two quick questions before you go. Now, what advice would you give to those who, they may not be authors, but they've got a dream or a passion and they want to follow it? What advice would you give them?
Find a way to make it happen.
Well, that's simple. But that's
really
that's
simple.
it.
And if it is writing that you want to do, it might be a memoir, it might be journal, it might be the start of a book. Write what's in your head and get it out. Even if it's just, if you think about it, if you write 1,000 words a day, which is really only about 3 foolscap pages, it's not that much. By the end of 2 months, you've got a first draft of a book. And you can sort of work around with that. So you start little, but you just start.
Yes, that's the key, isn't it? Just get started. And if you really want it badly enough, you will make it happen and you'll find the time to do it. So, okay, my last question to you, and I've had a lot of questions for you today, but the last one is one that, you know, I always finish the podcast with, and that is, what does being a woman living well mean to you?
It means use it or lose it. Essentially, it is, for me, it's all about moving, whether it's moving physically, moving mentally. It is about moving and following your curiosity. That is, living well to me is being able to follow your curiosity, being free to move, to learn, to do whatever it is that you want to do. That's living well.
Love that, because I agree with that as well. So anyway, thank you, Jo, for joining me today. It's been lovely having you as my guest and talking about you finding the courage to change and follow your passion. Everyone, be sure to look out for Jo's books that she's already written, and also for the next one, which is set in Whale Bay. That's the one I was mentioning before that I really loved. And, so look out for Jo's books and make sure that you get in touch with her and let her know what you think about them. And I wish you all the best, Jo, in your full-time career as a writer.
Thanks, Sue.
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed that chat with Jo, and not only because she's a friend, I thought that she had some really good, wise information and tips for everyday life in finding courage to change and to follow your passion no matter what it is. I would encourage you to check out Jo's books. I've enjoyed all of them and highly recommend them as a great read. And so I'm putting all her links in the show notes. So have you got something that you would really like to do? You know you want to do it, but you might be a bit scared. Just do it. What did Jo say? Find a way to make it happen. That's it for this episode. I hope you've enjoyed the chat that we've had with Jo today, and I'll see you next time. But until then, remember to live well, enjoy life, and most of all, be a woman living life your way. Bye for now.